The North Atlantic keeps two ledgers, one for ships that pass and one for ships it keeps. On a cold June morning in 1904, an emigrant steamer wrote its name on the wrong page. She was the SS Norge, Danish-flagged and workmanlike, her decks crowded with families whose clothes held the smell of places they would not see again. They came from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Russia, and beyond. They carried tickets that said America and bundles that said farewell. The ship's whistles sounded like doors opening. The ship's route traced a familiar arc: Copenhagen, Christiania, Kristiansand, a British port for coal and orders, then west. Memory is not a chart. The Norge's holds were stacked with trunks and kerosene tins and bedding rolls. Steerage thrummed with expectations and the clatter of tin cups. On deck, the children discovered wind as a toy, and the horizon as a promise you could point to. Mothers counted heads the way a cashier counts coins. Fathers practiced words they would soon need to sell labor in a language they did not yet own. Somewhere ahead rose a lonely Atlantic rock that cartographers marked in ink and sailors marked in their prayers. Rockall, the sort of thing you dismiss until it appears under your keel like a tooth. The captain paced, the officers counted miles. The Norge steamed on. Passengers packed the rails to watch a spill of pale sunlight break the mist. A girl practiced English for a customs desk. A mother sewed a hem and imagined a street. In the saloon, a clergyman drafted a sermon. No one thought a sermon would be a lifeboat. Then the ship shuddered, once as if it had coughed, twice as if something huge had seized it by the waist. Crockery leapt. A violin case skittered. Impact is counted in minutes. First minute, orders, close doors, reverse engines, sound the carpenters, stand by boats. Second minute, a list to starboard, subtle at first, then persuasive. Third minute, the world tilts. Even the youngest understands trouble. Bulkheads groaned, metal moving on metal like a tired animal. The bow heaved against the unseen stone, and then slipped free, wounded worse than anyone could afford. The North Atlantic did its arithmetic. Water finds a way. Alarm bells tore across decks already loud with voices. Stewards hurried families with gestures learned in training and completed in panic. A boatswain blew a whistle and kept moving. The first lifeboat kissed the davits, swung, and met the sea. Water climbed its sides like hands. People scrambled over the rail, reaching for anything that might hold. A woman pressed a parcel into a child's coat. "This is yours. Keep it tight." A priest folded a passport into a sailor's pocket. When a ship dies, there are shouted numbers: wood resisting, a gear that sticks and then lets go, cargo shifting, water punching through a stairwell. The list sharpened. One lifeboat leapt free and swamped, men and women thrown into water that stole heat. Another cleared the falling shadow and pulled until hands bled. A third hung at a fatal angle, tore loose, and spilled half its cargo. Those who remained beat off larger hands because a boat can only carry so much. The Norge settled by the bow. Smoke drew a black line against fog, and then the line smudged and sank. Within minutes, the ship's name slipped from iron to memory. Boats pulled through wreckage, dolls, a stuffed bird, a Bible open to storms. They shouted to one another in Norse and Danish and Yiddish and a dozen more. The boats moved apart. Survival often requires indifference. Then came long hours. Some boats had a compass, some biscuits, some only hands and hope. They watched the rim of the world for a smudge. When one finally rose, grown men wept like rain, sudden, relieved, unstoppable. A British steamer hove into view and lowered boats. Sailors hauled strangers aboard and counted heads. A woman who had not stopped shaking since the impact went still at the first taste of tea. News traveled crookedly, as it does across water. Telegraphs hammered, papers set type. In Copenhagen and Kristiansand and Oslo, at parsonages and in kitchens and in crowded boarding houses, People read and reread the lists of the saved, then searched for names not there as if the act might conjure them. Harbor masters added their handwriting to pages already crowded with someone else's grief. Parsons spoke of providence. Neighbors spoke of luck. Neither word felt large enough. Investigations began because ledgers demand closure. How close had she stood to rockall? Was the chart wrong? The current strange? The watch too hopeful? Tracing wheels rolled until the ink grew thin. Some blamed fog. Some blamed haste. Some said emigrant steamers always run too close to thin margins. There were hearings about signals and drills and responsibility, but hearings do not raise the dead. There were commendations for crews who outpulled exhaustion. There were lists, always lists. And then life resumed in its stubborn way. Survivors woke in clean beds and did not recognize the ceilings. They learned to be grateful for soup they could drink without spilling. A widow found her hands kept their grip. A boy kept the ship's name as a middle name, treaty and memory. A girl stayed conscious for the sailor's stitch that closed her wound. Some reached America after all, carrying a silence that no future address could forward. Others went home and became the person in the village who could predict weather by listening to the wind inside the ear. Count the dead, the papers said. The number settled beyond 600. Far too many children. Add the column of the lost to the column of the saved, and you have a total that equals the number of souls who set out. Add why or how, and the math falls apart. Return to the coordinates, and you find only water speaking one language against air. The ocean is precise in what it erases. The Atlantic keeps two ledgers, and a memory that is not ours. Somewhere on that gray morning, a ship struck a stone no larger than a fistful of horizon and left a page behind. We keep what we can, names in ledgers, testimonies in coal dust rooms, souvenirs in drawers. We tell the story carefully and tell it again, because the dead require upkeep and memory is the only currency we can spend. Stand at a Scottish harbor and look west. Imagine a steamer feeling for rocks. Imagine a lifeboat the size of a kitchen table holding more than it should. Imagine a mother teaching a new name to a child who will never see the street where that name was once spoken easily. Hold your breath, and you may hear the sea's arithmetic when a ship goes quiet. Numbers without names, a ledger the ocean keeps for itself, and sometimes lets us read. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.